He's a messenger of peace. He's the savior of Luxembourg. It's Tom Lama and disorganized play. Disorganized play. It's disorganized play. Hey, hi everybody. Thank you so much, Farquaad, for that inspiration for today's completely improvised song and title opening. So enjoy, everyone. Hello and welcome. I'm Tom Lommel. I am a messenger of peace. I am the savior of Luxembourg. I don't know if you heard during the opening, but that's me. I am also the Dungeon Bastard. So, welcome everyone. It is our prep show for Disorganized Play. My computer's over here, so now instead of watching me go like this, you get to watch me go like this. Very fun. So, welcome everyone. Glad you could join me on this beautiful Tuesday after a long holiday. Right. Yeah, it's exciting times. We've got good stuff a-brewing here. Good stuff a-brewing. So, for those of you who are not familiar, I am running a game of Tales from the Yawning Portal every Wednesday on Twitch, here on Saving Throw Show. I've got a great cast, a great set of players, and it's been a super fun game so far. I got a lot of hacks and home brew rules that kind of add a little spin onto the whole thing. I'm really happy with how it's going. So every Tuesday, I sit down with all of you and talk about what I'm thinking needs to happen this week. On Wednesday, you tune in and watch me play and giggle. And on Thursday, we come back to, well, you didn't do everything you said you were going to do. So there you go. That's, it's called a learning experience. As Mr. Chris Perkins said recently on the internet, the great thing about DMing is there's always another session, unless things go really, really wrong. And I've been on both sides of that situation where I've run such a bad session that the players chewed me out afterwards. And I've also been in a situation where I've just sat through such a bad session, I'm like, I don't think so, I'm done. So, or that went horrible. So, it's a continual learning experience. I'm here to share my experience with you, and hopefully you can avoid some of the mistakes that I've made throughout my career, and also learn from some of the mistakes that I have made on camera right here, Wednesday nights, live before your very eyes. So, as long as people walk away with a sense of satisfaction and fun, that's what matters. That's what D&D is all about. All right. So, today's topics. Let's talk about things that are going to happen today. Number one, pinging plot radar. We're going to, actually, ladies and gentlemen, so Mr. James V was very generous and set me up with a new webcam. I did not have time to set it up because instead what I chose to do was create the plot radar template for it. Look at how professional this is, you guys. Oh my God. Well, I mean, I'm not a great layout guy, let's be honest. I wish I had better skills in graphic design. But if you are a Patreon backer, this is now in the Patreon general folder for you, and it's under Iron Keep. It is called plot_radar_template.pdf. It is yours to download, enjoy, use, and abuse as you see fit. If you're not a Patreon backer, hey, guess what? Tomorrow's the end of the month. Today is an ideal time to join our Patreon on Saving Throw Show. You get access to some of my special materials that I put together for this game. You get to participate in a special cast fireside chat. You get a few extra other bennies. It's just a helpful way. We've got some exciting things on the frontier. We're going to need your ongoing support and your regular contributions that we can kind of count on, because we have things like rent that we have to pay every month, and it would be nice to know that we can pay those expenses every month rather than throwing ourselves upon the forbearance of our backers' whims every end of the month or so. So, not to downplay, you guys have been tremendously helpful and supportive and generous, and I appreciate everybody who kicks in a cash donation whenever they can, or bits, or whatever it is, and even just donating your time. So my only point is, it's nice to be able to look at that Patreon number and go, all right, well, give or take, if somebody comes on or somebody comes off, we know we're for sure, like, that's going to be coming in at the beginning of the month. That's helpful for us for budgeting purposes, right? But that being said, you guys have been terrific, and it's enabling us to take some steps to grow the channel in some significant ways that I can't share with you, but I'm excited about, and I don't know what Dom has said about it, so I don't want to let the cat out of the bag on that one. So that is, we're going to start off with pinging plot radar. We are going to then move on to the topic of making hard moves. This is a concept stolen from Dungeon World. If you're not familiar with Dungeon World, it is a fantastic resource for DM advice, even if you never play it. There's a whole section on campaign fronts and making moves, making hard moves, and that sort of thing. And I encourage you to read it if you have not experienced or delved into the world of Dungeon World. It will help make you a better improvisational DM. And, you know, I think that's redundant. I think straight out it'll just make you a better DM. If you don't have to play the system a ton, but challenge yourself to play with it, and you will develop skills that will carry over into your Dungeons & Dragons game. So we're going to talk about making hard moves. That's just sort of a catch-all placeholder. Specifically, what I want to talk about is, we talked about this on Thursday. Hey, what's our next logical step for the campaign? Where are we at? The players really did a tactical strike deep into the heart of Goblin territory. When we're thinking about next session, what do we think the players are going to do? How do we think the goblins are going to respond? And in my opinion, the goblins are going to respond with a GM hard move. We'll talk about that in more detail. And then finally, I have some exciting announcements about Carthune. So we looked at the book on Thursday, and I have some news on that front, which some of you who tuned in over on Friday night already know. But I'm excited about it nonetheless. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about what my plans are for the Alzheimer's 24-hour charity marathon. And I have an interesting idea that I'm going to talk with you all about a little bit. It's not really so much up for discussion as I just want to preview what's going to happen tomorrow night. So that's our agenda for the day, with those things in mind. If you have questions or things like that, I have to kick Grab out. So she. All right, so that is our agenda here today. So, very good. Let's talk about pinging plot radar first of all. I want to show you this. So, I'm going to move the camera again. Again, if I'd had everything set up, we would be able to just drop into the overhead shot. But I had to take the dog to the vet this morning, and then I wanted to get this thing laid out really pretty close to what I wanted it to be, and I'm fairly happy with it. But I didn't get my second overhead drop-in cam set up. So let me not click stop streaming. let me pull up our Cobalt map. You can look at that while I'm moving the camera here quick. So this is gonna live like that. I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, I set this up in the wrong spot. Okay, so. Fussing. I want you guys to look at that Cobalt map and think about what's going to come out of that locked door. That's a little treat for you guys to all consider here, and it's going to be relevant to our discussion here in a minute. I forgot. What did I just do? Anything? Move my mouse around. Giving you ongoing commentary. so that you know what's... Oh, that's what I did. I took the map off. Sure. All right. Well, hey, everybody, look at my apartment. Pretty messy. Let's do this. Let's see what this looks like. It's very close. All right, hang on, I gotta readjust this. Should have thought this through a little bit sooner. Let's try it now. Welcome to the family, Zero Rules. All right. Hey, that's the whole thing. Very good. All right. That looks pretty good. Pretty good. That'll work. I'm gonna clear the center of the table a little bit more than I expected, but that's okay. All right. So, everybody hear me okay? Everything's cool. Everybody's done being... Ugh, sorry. I'm sorry about the mic and whatnot. All right. Does that look all right? You know what, Hank? Let me drop in some fun time, good times things here. So this is this thing. Make this bigger. I'm gonna bring it up front. So it lives over here. I'm going to make an overlay just for doing this sort of stuff, but I haven't gotten to it yet. So I apologize for that. And then let me add in, where is that? Let me add in this thing. No, don't do that. Where do you live? Well, you're up there, okay. Bring you up front of here. All right. It's not exactly what I wanted to do, you know, the layout that I like, but there we are. Okay. I'm going to come up with a different, like, set of, I'm going to come up with a different set of things that allow you to actually, like, allow me to just click into it and I'll be done with it. This is a lot like my paint setup when I paint minis, but I don't like it to say paint. So that's all right. Okay. So if we, this is our new plot radar. I want to show you the old one here in a minute, but let's talk about what this is. This is just 2 pages, very simple. It's got 6 columns. It's got an area for your roster of players so that you can color code them. And so when you put your sticky notes into each column, you can have color codes for them and you know what they are. So we talked about that before, but I'll show you that. Maybe I'll show you that in a little more detail. I don't want to fill out this whole thing today because it's going to take too much time. So you will see our standard 6 columns that we had before, right? Threads that are closed and retired go in this column. Threads that are going to be coming up, or plot elements that are going to be coming up immediately in the next session go in this column. Things that are approaching within the next 2, maybe 3 sessions go into this column. See if I can live a little more straight on. Here we have things that are distant. We don't know how far they're out. You know, they're obviously more than 2 sessions out, right? But they live over here. Things that are dangling, things that have been introduced but neglected, those live over here. And then finally, our last column is dormant. These are things that we introduced that the players have forgotten about, that we can potentially revive, right? These 2 columns are somewhat related. I think of things that are, what's the difference between dangling and dormant here, right? I'll have to look at my examples to articulate that more clearly. All right, so we've got things for the roster, and then down along the bottom, we have this long kind of horizontal area. This is new for you guys. This is sparks. So last week we talked about like things that like new ideas that we had, things that we wanted to introduce, things that, you know, basically little adventure seed bits of inspiration, right? I'm calling those sparks, and they live down here because they haven't been introduced, but they're like little ideas. They're little sparks of imagination that haven't caught fire yet, that haven't been introduced anywhere, that aren't really necessarily things that we planned. Like, you know, we know that the big bad is distant, and you know, they're looming, and we have to get them in here. Sparks are things that we may or may not choose to introduce. And I made this horizontal area so that these sparks could go in anywhere. They could become immediate, they could become approaching, they could be dangling or dormant things. Yeah, not so much, but they could slide into any of these 3 columns. So I didn't want to have a separate column for sparks because that makes it feel like it's part of the continuum. These things can pop up anywhere within the continuum. It's just that we have an idea. 0 rules. I'm not sure what a Kanban board is. What is a Kanban board? If you could explain that for me. I can't Google it here while I'm hosting the chat. But yeah, I'm not familiar. You know, one of the things that I looked at when I was putting this together was I was considering different ways that a writer's room operates and how they beat out a story in a writer's room. And the reason that I didn't pursue that more heavily is that a writer's room follows a definitive 3-act structure or a 13-episode arc, or back in the old days, 26 episodes, right? That's what a writer's room is, looking at fitting plot elements into a fixed amount of time, into a fixed structure. And this is designed to help you manage and connect plot elements in a rolling, open-ended, ongoing type of plot structure, right? So we're continually adjusting what our episodes look like every session, and each session is going to be something new. A Kanban board is a work and workflow visualization tool that enables you to optimize the flow of your work. Physical Kanban boards typically use sticky notes on a whiteboard to communicate status, progress, and issues. That might exactly be, I might have created a Kanban board here. Absolutely. I will look into that further. It's a fascinating idea. This is definitely sort of, it's inspired by project management, right? But it's not project management because, in my point of view, it's not strictly project management because things can pop up and drop off, and there's no consequence for those things popping up and dropping off, okay? It's not like, it's not like you're doing software design and they go, okay, well, we should really design the login screen, and then that drops off or has an issue or whatever, and the whole project like hinges upon, well, they really need to be able to log in securely. Or, that's a pretty pedestrian example. But the point being, yes, requirements change and pieces of a software project come in and go out, but that is much more of a 5-alarm fire type of situation than it is whether they remember that there was a weird draconic word on the map that meant reveal or not, right? Like, that's not important. And not only that, but this is designed, typically once you get into your project workflow on a piece of software development, brainstorming new specs is bad, like at least in my you know, my experience as a former software developer, or, you know, not very current software developer, let's put it that way. So you don't want your clients continually coming up with new ideas. That's a great way to like burn through a lot of cash, right? So this is designed to be more open-ended, flexible, accepting of these types of ideas. Let me walk you through it, and I'll show you what I mean. So we'll take a look at our existing plot radar, which is a giant sheet of paper. Now, one of the things is that this was a little too big to fit into a notebook. What I like about this new format is I can put it in a DM's notebook or just a very skinny binder. Ideally, I'd have like, you could put sheet protectors. You could put this inside of a sheet protector and then just write directly on it if you so chose. I don't really recommend doing that. I would like to have it in a sheet protector just so the notes would stick a little bit better. But I didn't like the size of these stickies, so I went to Staples. I got the smaller ones. So we have what is Avril's deal, right? Well, so in our closed column, closed retired threads, what is Avril's deal? You know, so I think the difference between dangling and dormant here, I just want to come back and pick this up. This is dangling because it is very much in the player's awareness. Okay? There's a difference between dangling and dormant, and the difference is the amount of player awareness. My party, my players, are very aware of a thing called the Iron Keep, of a location called the Iron Keep. It's in the name of the show. They're reminded every time we sit down to play that there's this thing called the Iron Keep. But there's no connection to anything else. It doesn't, like, they don't know how it plays in. It's not currently active in the storyline. But it's very high in their awareness. Okay? So that's why it's dangling. Because they're aware of it, but it's not connected to anything else. Dormant is something that has been introduced that they are no longer aware of. They've forgotten about it. It's gone dormant. This whole thing over here, I know it's there, and they have the physical prop that could cause this to pop back up, but it's dormant because the player's forgotten about it. So that's the difference. Is dangling means the players are aware of this thing. Maybe they want to explore it. It's something active, like it's in their mind, right? But they're still trying to puzzle out, why is this connected to something? Why, you know, is this going to be something? They're waiting for it to blossom into and branch connections between the other things on the board. This dormant category is they've forgotten about it. And that means it could just go underground and go away and forget about it. Who cares? We just drop it. Doesn't matter. Or I could use it to connect as a connecting element to something else. All right. So, Avril's deal is something that is closed and retired. What are the kobolds up to? They're trying to reclaim the... That's essentially been answered, right? They're trying to reclaim this Sunless Citadel. They're trying to reclaim this former temple to the Cult of the Dragon. The players in this game don't particularly think of the Cult of the Dragon as a vicious, evil order that is trying to bring about the ultimate rise and domination of worms across the Forgotten Realms. So they don't really care about that. That's why this is essentially closed. Or they're trying to reclaim okay, great. So we have some immediate things. What are the goblins up to? We got some idea of that, right? We didn't get a ton of what they're up to, but there were some things that popped up. And I think that maybe this is going to have to continue to be explored. So this is going to be an immediate element. What are the goblins up to? Now, what I like about this is I can probably fit, let's see, if I really, pop them in there kind of tight, 2, 3, I can for sure fit 4 of these things in a column. And I think that's a manageable amount of things. If you wanted to, you could just print off another one and continue the columns down, right? Or write smaller or whatever you want to do. But let's drop this in. What are we've had some foreshadowing of what the goblins are up to, but not much, right? Like a lot of it was either the interrogation with the prisoners, or it came about as Yuzdrael giving them information like, oh, there's something a little weird about the goblin leader. All right. We have a thread here. I'm not going to write all of these. Gregory and Dell's deal. What's Gregory and Dell's deal? That to me lives in between this sort of thing, right? I think we could probably put on here, I don't know, I was thinking about putting on here, like, what's the goblin's immediate response to what's to PC's raid. What's the goblin's response to the PC's raid? That's going to come up next session, guaranteed. That's happening. Okay? All right. And also, another element that's probably coming up rather immediately is this goblin leader is, quote, different, right? I mean, he's no ordinary goblin is what they were told. Okay, good. Approaching things. Twig blights. I feel like Belloc the Druid is approaching in the next 2 or 3 sessions. Well, we are actually. We will just finish this thing out, right? We're so close. Why not just roll it out? Is that approaching? It's sort of tied to Belloc. You could almost straddle those 2 columns. Golthius tree. We got something down here in our sparks. And I think that's distant or approaching. I think that's tied to Belloc, so I'm going to put it in this underneath that column. How did Thon's father die? All right? We've been talking about ways to get the ranger more involved. Of course, we can't forget our 44,040 pigeons. I'm going to put some of this stuff as, I don't know. I like a Chardalon being, a Chardalon that has come up a lot. We don't know where it lives in the players' imaginations, right? General Fancy Pants of Ivalon, welcome aboard. Things that are dormant. Okay. So that's everything that's on our board. Again, you know, now we could take our roster and put it down in here. I don't have my colored markers out, and I'm not going to get them out. But we could then color code all of these things into party members and see who's getting, you know, who's getting the bulk of the plot hooks and who's kind of left out in the cold. There's one other thing here that I think is either immediate or approaching. I'm going to put it approaching. Talks, voices. We know it's in the toys that she makes, and we know that's in these jade dragon statuettes. And it looks like Amy's going to be back in the game tomorrow night, so I think we're in good shape there. I think that needs to live there. When, you know, if she can't, she couldn't make it last week, so that sort of dropped back. It might have been more immediate if we had if she had been in the session. So this is our plot radar, right? I think this. Again, this is for you Patreon backers. This is out there available for you to look at, to enjoy, to just download the 2-page PDF and grab some Post-it notes and fire away. I find this, I'm really happy with this idea. And so I'm glad that I could get it out there for you guys to download yourselves. So this, how did Fawn's father really die? I think that's an important thing. All right, so we're pinging plot radar. We're taking a look at what everything that's on the board, seeing if we have to add anything. We added some things to the board. What's the Goblin's response to the PC's raid? The Goblin leader is different. We need to make some decisions about that. I talked about how Belloc is experimenting with different brews and weird things, and we introduced that element. Yeah, I mean, I just came up with this thing 2 weeks ago, literally myself, Red Dragon, and so I'm very excited about being able to use this tool, but it's not something that I've like extensively tested and developed or anything like that. But I think this is. What I like about it is it gives me a glimpse into all of the elements of the campaign that I care about, and I can tell whether things are being neglected, are being intensified. It just gives me it gives me a different perspective on how to connect things, and that's what's important. And that's one of the reasons that I made this wide layout like this instead of a top-down layout. Like I could have put the things along the side and then had them columns, but I don't want you to read it down like this is a set of marching orders. I want you to like go from place to place and meander through and try and figure out, oh, okay, Goblin's response to the PC's raid. We could foreshadow some things about Belloc by including that in here. Maybe the Goblin leader has a twig blight familiar or something like that, right? And so now all of a sudden we're bringing these elements that we know we're ultimately going to have to get to, the Golthius tree being the the ultimate end of this encounter. But also the Goblin leader is different. You know, that now all of a sudden this starts to foreshadow what's coming on down here. And that's really like that's the clutch. That's the clutch function of this thing, is it enables you to foreshadow elements and bring them up in a way that the players understand and process them without it having to be a huge logical stretch or a surprise for them in a way that is jarring for the game experience. I'm not saying it's wrong to have logical stretches every once in a while or to spring surprises on your players, but if your game is a continual set of surprises and implausible jumps, then the players kind of like, they either embrace the chaos or they just lose any kind of, why should we bother trying to follow the storyline here, because it just doesn't matter, like it doesn't make any sense. So they lose a lot of investment that way. All right, so there's something else that I have a spark on that I'm going to add to the board here, and that is, this was a big one that I had last week, and I want to share it with you. We had this handout about Kundrukar, right? So they found a dwarven scroll case, and I want to put this underneath the immediate column. I mean, the nice thing about this part of it is I can move these around if I want to, but it kind of like lines up if I want to. With this thing where they find a scroll fragment that has a piece of information about Kundrukar, and Kundrukar is the dwarven settlement or fortress that's in Forge of Fury, right? It's this famous dwarven forge where this weapons smith crafted all these exquisite weapons, and then it was overrun by orcs, and it's been since taken over, right? They found a fragment about that. And as written, the adventure is supposed to take you to this, what it's called, like the Smoking Tooth or something like that. It takes place like you go to some mountain and then you drill your way down into the mountain, and eventually, after going through 4 or 5 levels of various inhabitants who are all kind of interacting with one another, you arrive at the dwarven settlement itself, buried at the bottom of the mountain, right? So I was just sort of flipping through my book and trying to come up with some ideas of like, all right, it's early, we're maybe halfway through Sunless Citadel. Where do I want to? Let's take a look at Forge of Fury and see how I want to maybe start incorporating that into the campaign down the stretch here, right? Well, I've got the Iron Keep over here dangling big time, and as I said, it's high up in the player's consciousness because that's the name of the campaign. Iron Keep Chronicles. But it isn't connected to anything that's going on in the world right now. They went there as teenagers, and now 3 sessions later, I've sort of scrubbed it from the relevance and experience of what's going on, right? And that was intentional. Like, I wanted them to know, like, okay, the Iron Keep is going to become important, but it's not like the one central locus of everything that happens. Let's find our way into it. Well, I had this flash of inspiration, and we've talked about how the Iron Keep is potentially this extra-dimensional location where you open it up like, not necessarily like a Russian nesting doll, but almost like a puzzle box where there's secret compartments, and you open a door here, and all of a sudden there's a whole new section that you didn't realize, right? It's kind of a Baba Yaga's hut, kind of, your standard Doctor Who TARDIS kind of thing, where it's bigger on the inside than it appears on the outside, right? Well, what I flashed on in reading through Forge of Fury and stuff like that, what if Kundrukar is Dwarvish for Fortress of Iron? Okay, that brings us back to that suddenly the Iron Keep starts to make a connection. And they go, oh, we know where that is. Now what I need to do is, if I'm going to follow this up, I need to give them some idea of why they couldn't go there immediately. Okay, they need a key. They need a password. There's some sort of magical glyph that they need to unlock or disable, or whatever the case may be. Whatever it is that would make them realize, oh, okay, there's something here that's bigger than what it is. And then I need to figure out, also what I need to figure out is, like I said, 4/5 of the adventure is going through this mountain complex that's been taken over by other various forces, and then finally you enter the Dwarven thing. I think we can do something where the Dwarven complex is attached to the Iron Keep, but you have to go through the mountain in order to get the MacGuffin that opens up the section of the Iron Keep that has the Dwarven Fortress inside of it. So this is something that this is a flash that I had this weekend. It's a realization that I wanted to talk with you guys about. But it's a spark that I think can really like pull these things together. Now, this whole thing about Thon's father dying is something that is going to make us go, hang on a minute. So this, how did Thon's father really die? This is going to bring us back to the village probably, right? Because we've been hinting at maybe there's a conspiracy here that I'm thinking maybe the mayor is involved. We didn't want it to be Tock's parents or whatever, but when we're looking at where all of our threads are going, we've got this pulls us very heavily in the direction of the Iron Keep. This pulls us back to the village of Oakhurst. Okay, so that's our plot radar. This is the template is something you can download. You have to get your own sticky notes. Sorry about that, but I like it. I think if I were to do anything, I would maybe make these margins a little bit wider, but I'm okay with them where they are. You know, it could stand to be prettied up a little bit, but it's very functional the way it is. So the idea is you don't have to print these pages off over and over and over again. You just move the stickies around as things change session to session. You know what? The other thing that I might suggest is that at the end of each session, you snap a picture of this thing and just file it away in your phone or whatever, so that you know, like, okay, here's what was going on this date after this session, and then you can kind of go back through and watch those elements rise. And you know what? I'm sorry. I gotta take this call. All right. So, guys, I'm over in this camera. I'm over in this camera. I'm not in this camera. I'm in this camera. All right. Are these always going to be 8.5 by 11? I assume you want them European, like A4 sized or something like that. I mean, I could try and do them A4 sized. It shouldn't be a huge issue to change them to A4 size if you want that version. I will do that for our Patreon backers. Sure, why not? I won't be able to test them because I'm not going to get A4 paper for you guys. I'm a jerk, but that's the deal. That is the deal. That is the dealio. And landscape A3 or A2. I'll take a look at doing that. All right. So that's our plot radar. That's as I've talked about that for 45 or half an hour. That's good enough. All right. That brings us to making hard moves. So I want to take a look at our map. So this is a oversized printout of the original map that came in the original adventure. I got the PDF, and I always like to overlay some tracing paper over the top of it, and then use that to make notes, right? So I'm just gonna quick sketch this stuff out. Let me get some of my quick sketch materials. You guys get to watch me do a little crafting on today's prep stream. How about that? This is not the set of materials that I want. Let me see what I got in my bag. This should work. All right. I've become enamored lately of clutch lead holders. So I don't know. I don't know what you guys like to. I don't know why, but I'm fairly excited about how thick and fast you can put lead on the paper here. And we're doing a pretty quick job, just a quick sketch here of what's going on. Now, admittedly, I could also just draw on the thing, right? But and also I could just print off another version. There's something about doing this physical map, though, that helps you, or helps me, anyhow. This is just the way my brain processes, right? So I never want to give you the idea that this is the best way to DM. Like, do what works for you, right? Some people just aren't improvisationally inclined. They stumble at it. It's not a good experience for their players, not a good experience for them, etc., 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 right? That's fine. If you're not a DM who winging it comes naturally to you and you don't feel like you get good results out of it, then find the style that suits you best. These are things that just spark inspiration and are functions of the way my brain works. So find your own personal style and make it work for you. But I'm a very visual person. And I like to be able to see this stuff on the map. I like to be able to see how it all physically relates to each other. I guess we should draw this room in. Now, I've only drawn this part of the map because the players have essentially, there's room, most of these rooms over on this piece of it, they've explored, okay? So they pushed through to Area 37. That's where they ended up last time. So they came around here, went up here, dinked around with these things, went up here, now ignored this section, but pushed up through here, around this corner, killed these guys, came up here, killed these guys, pushed through here, stopped here, and came back. They found the dragon, came back, right? Which means this area is irrelevant. There's nobody in this area, so that's irrelevant. Dead, 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 unexplored, explored, dead, you know, like those aren't even goblin forces. So this is really the only relevant area of the map that we're going to deal with. I wanted to quick sketch it out just because it allows us to do a little bit of focus, right? And I'm a little bit of a, I like being crafty. So it's the same thing down here. I'm not trying to go for a detailed battle map of this thing. I have drawn this area, but I just want to get some lead down so that I can take a look at what I've got. And the nice thing about using tracing paper is I don't have to like go back and check through everything, right? All I really have to do is just quick make some marks. So let's do it this way. We'll flip this over. Now we've got an idea of what our various rooms, kind of what's left to explore, like how these areas are going to interact. So let's get back to like, why am I even doing this, right? We're talking about making hard moves. So the important thing is, what's the goblin's response to what happened last session? So as I just pointed out, the PCs went up, pushed through, did this huge strike, and took out probably a dozen goblins, right? That's roughly like half their forces, maybe a third of their forces, whatever it is. So it's incumbent upon us as the DM to think about what would be the living, breathing, logical response to that sort of action on the PC's behalf. And this is where your job as the DM is no longer to cook from the cookbook and make the recipe as written. It is your job to go, okay, suddenly we're out of crab cakes. What other appetizers can we quick whip up to keep these guests happy, right? I always use this cooking metaphor, and you know, I'm so on it, but it is really that sort of response is, okay, they've gone off, they're going to have to take a long rest in the goblin or in the kobold area in order to level up. So we know that a long rest is coming. That gives the goblins some time to come back and, or some time to formulate some sort of response, right? Now, the response can be, we're not doing anything different. We're overconfident. We're happy. You know, we are allied with dark forces who are giving us this supernatural advantage, and we're not worried about one, you know, the kobolds coming back and stealing our dragon back. That's essentially sort of like, that's the status quo, okay? Maintain forces as written, maybe put people on alert, etc. I don't know that that's, it's a valid response. It's not the response that I'm inclined to make, right? The response that I'm inclined to make is what in Dungeon World terms is called a hard move, okay? And a hard move means you make a play against the players that puts them in jeopardy, that raises the stakes, that taxes their resources, that denies them opportunities for rest or recovery or whatever it is, but you make a hard move against them. And it's a way of varying the pacing and the plot, and it's a way of, you know, really the most important thing is it's you raising the stakes on the players and calling them forward to calling them forward to try to step up to the challenge at hand. Okay? That's the essence of making a hard move. It is not done with malice. That's important to keep in mind. Okay? This is not something that, you know, well, I've decided that it's time for me to be a jerk, so I'm going to let loose on these guys. Okay? And as Ivalon points out, the DM doesn't have any dice to roll, so it enables the DM to have a reason to escalate danger in the game, right? So that's fine. Essentially, the players invite misfortune upon themselves in that case. And that's why it's important in this context to state that it is done without malice. So one of the reasons that it works so well in Dungeon World is the players roll badly. You know, they roll a 6-. They know that the GM gets to make a hard move against them. They rolled poorly, and now the consequence of that is the GM gets to do something that is going to hurt them or put them in danger or deny them resources, etc. Right? So there's no tinge of malice to it. It's just the fickle nature of the randomness of a die roll. Okay? Well, in D&D, we don't have that kind of mechanic. So when I say I'm going to make a hard move against them in my in-between planning here, it's extremely important, as I've said, that I'm not doing this because I want to make them pay or I want to be rude, you know, to them. I'm doing this because I want to escalate the stakes and make the game tougher, more interesting, more challenging for them. And one of the reasons for me in this particular case to make this call is they essentially sort of sailed through this area and they're going to level up after this, and I think it's time to up the stakes. So I want to spring a surprise on them. And I think what that constitutes is the goblins are going to amass some sort of an attack, and it's either going to be a single-pronged attack that comes through this back door. So this door right here, in fact, let's put it in a different color. This door right here is locked, okay? The kobolds haven't been able to open it. Maybe, let's just say for the sake of our fiction here, either the goblins have figured out a way to bypass it or have decided to break it down, okay? The other thing that can happen is we can have a second-pronged attack that comes in from this direction, if we so choose. So they can be flanking, they could be reinforcements, they could be a strike force. Those are just some ideas that I'm throwing on the paper, right? The goblins have allies, but the allies are deeper down at the bottom of this well type of area, right? And I don't know if I think it's probably a little rude to bring them into it. Now, that does bring us back to we've got that element in our plot radar of twig blights. We could throw a couple twig blights into this combat to make it a little more interesting and do a little bit of foreshadowing of what's going on down below. And that's not breaking the fiction as written, right? The adventure as written. Twig blights get introduced super early. In fact, they're introduced in the village if you want to introduce them in the village. So I think it could be fair to like start introducing this idea that there's a weird supernatural plant involved. Okay? So that's something to think about. But let's just go through and we're going to go through our map here and tag what our various forces are. Well, I wrote this down already, so let me grab my notes. All right. So if we look at this, let me write this in a little bit. Just paint this on here. In this room, we got the Goblin Chief. I got 3 Hobgoblins and a Shaman. We have and then in this room we have 34 goblins, but I don't remember how many of them are combatant. Let me look it up quick. All right, only 4 of them. So 4 and then 10 commoners. All right. Okay, and that's it. All right, so we're really looking at a force, a total force here. We've got 10 goblins, 3 hobgoblins, the Goblin Chief, and the Shaman. Okay, that's what we're looking at in terms of our guard. We've got well, we do have 4 goblins here. They're in this stockade. They're in this jail, right? So here we've got 3 kobolds. Use Drail. Three times kobolds. 3 times kobolds. And then in area 20 we've got 24 kobolds, but how many of them? And 19 we've got kobold guards. So let's take a look and see what those... Use Drail probably is, right? Oops, sorry about that. Use Drail is probably combatant. It's hard to know, right? So area 20, Hall of Dragons. So there's 3 kobolds there. We can't forget that we've got the dragon. Got the wormling here. And to be fair, I don't prep like this every single time, right? But the reason I wanted to sit down and walk through this with you all is that I think the hard move here is that the goblins make an ambush, okay? And so let's get an idea on the board of who's in what area. Dragon Throne. That's not... What room is that? There's the big room that has like 24. Okay. So, again, it's 3 times kobolds and 7 times commoners who are potentially non-combatant, right? Okay. So that gives us an array of forces to put on the thing. We also have to figure out where the party is ostensibly resting, right? We're going to force them to take a rest. And I think that, so if we just do a quick inventory, thanks for joining me, for those of you who have to go, since it is 1 o'clock. I've got 9, 12, 15. On the one side, we've got 15 kobolds, 7 commoners, 1 wormling, Meepo, and the party. Okay, so they've got numbers on their side. That's one side. On the goblin side, we've got the chief, three hobgoblins, 1 shaman, and then we've got 10 goblins and 10x commoners, which is maybe so. Let's talk for a moment about what's the most interesting scenario here, right? Which is, or some. Let's talk about some constraints that are around the that are around this combat. Number one, I want the players to have leveled up because I don't want to go through that whole thing of making them spend the time to get their characters leveled up, and then before they can actually get that version of their characters out, I go, oh, by the way, before you level up, this is what happens. So that's a legit move, but I think it's kind of it's not good for the play experience, right? They get all hyped up to make their characters and then crap the bed, and you pull the rug out from under them and go, oh no, that's not going to happen. Okay, so keep that in mind. I want them to be second level. So that's happening. Oh, don't forget, on the party side of it, we have DJ Regular. Ronald PP, I don't remember what his last name is. All right. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is the party's going to be second level. So around 8 hours of a long rest have to have passed. Okay? What's the other thing? Well, the kobolds, they have the overwhelming advantage here. Okay? There's 15 of them, even though they're slightly weaker. And they have the wormling dragon, although it's questionable whether they can control that thing. So I think, important notes to put to keep track of is that this thing is a wild card. Okay, it's been established that the wormling does not follow very good instructions. It's not mature. Let's put it that way. It's still rather feral in nature. So it might turn on the party. I don't know that it will turn on the kobolds, but it might turn. So this is not an ace in the hole, is what I'm really getting at. Like, I want that to be very clear. The other advantage that these guys have is they have the element. I know I'm writing this too small for you guys, but sorry. They have the element of surprise. And that's a huge advantage. So now you can either be a jerk about that, or you can mitigate it somewhat. Now what I mean by that is you can be a jerk and say, oh, they figure out a way to pick the lock, and they do so silently, and they walk in and they spring a big ambush, and they murder or they free these guys. Don't forget, there's 4 goblin prisoners, right? And, that's a big question. Have they ever done a prisoner jailbreak before? Maybe not. Maybe they figured this is their big move to do it. So that's potential reinforcements out there, is these 4 goblin prisoners that are really... They're enemy combatants. So you can be a jerk about it and go, oh, they silently slip in, they murder these 3 guards, they murder these 3 guards, they wall off this, or they take Yuzrael captive, right? So those are dramatic, high stakes those are dramatic, high-stakes type of actions. You can make a very hard move and just determine this happens, and then maybe it turns into kind of a hostage negotiation type of situation. Or, as Ivalon points out, you could do it as a timed thing, which is if the party doesn't respond by, like, and this is always this is always a helpful exercise, is to go round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5. Okay, round 1 and 2, they're busy overcoming guards, and they are stationed in these particular positions. Round 3, they begin confronting Yusdrael. If the party is not there by round 4, they have captured Yusdrael. Okay, that's something to think about. So that's the hard move here, is you give them a big advantage for the element of surprise. That's a lot of what I call DMX Machina, right? Like, you're grabbing a big piece of the plot away from the characters. You can also go easy on the players and have them, let's say they decide to chop through this door. Well, now when the players come into the encounter, they come into the encounter with the sound of the alarm being raised, the goblins yelling, "The door has been breached, everyone, to arms, to arms, to arms," etc. That sort of thing, right? So the goblins lose some of the element of surprise. This element of surprise, that's under your control. You can decide how much they have. Now, you can also be like 100%, I don't know, I don't want to say 100% in the player's favor, but you can weigh the encounter even further in the player's favor by saying, okay, you're going to take a long rest. Is there anything you're going to do? Are you going to put anybody on watch or whatever? It's, it seems like the kobolds have it, etc. So you can ask them, okay, you got to take a long rest. What are you going to do? In which case, they may station, they may screw with this sort of pre-programmed outline of events, right? And they may say, oh, well, we're going to have a person on watch. We're going to sleep in this room. We're going to have a person on watch right outside this door. Well, now all of a sudden they're right in the thick of the combat. If you decide to put them, back here with Meepo, then all of a sudden they're a lot further away from the action. So that's another thing to balance when you're prepping this sort of encounters. Like, well, let's establish what the opening situation, like what the given circumstances are going to look like, and then let's come up with a round-by-round plan of here's how we anticipate it's going to play out, with the idea that this is fungible, this is flexible, this can change depending upon what sort of inputs come in from we post a guard or not post a guard, how comfortable the party seems, etc. Okay? But the reason I wanted to draw all of this was, number one, figure out, okay, is this going to be a choke point? So that's the other part of it, right? Is what type of fight is this going to be? If it's 10 goblins in a hallway behind a door, it becomes a choke point combat, and it's basically like 6 archers line up in this hallway back here and just start picking dudes off, and the people who are frontline fighters don't have a ton of stuff to do, right? If it becomes more of they gain a surprise somehow and they flood in, and now there's goblins all over in this area, well, now some kobolds are over here. There's a lot more dynamic opportunities for the party to get involved. And also, like, you don't want to cast a spell that's going to kill your allied kobold. That could upset your Yusdrael, right? In their sense, you have this alliance with them. But also, if they come in here, it's really sort of a three-way fight where you're going to have forces come in from this hallway. You're going to have forces come out of this doorway. You're going to have the elite guards attack here. You could also potentially have the goblins make a hard push into this area, capture a bunch of hostages, and then do like a stand-up fight where now they're controlling the choke point, where kobolds are trying to get in and the goblins are just murdering and casting spells out through the door this way. And the party maybe comes back here and bounces back and forth and fights with them. But the other reason to draw this map is you can open up a whole other front with these flanking goblins. So you can split your forces. So instead of having your chief and your 10 goblins and everybody all push through this from this direction, you split off and you have the chief and the shaman and three of his best goblins, or maybe you just have the top guys, right? The chief, the 3 hobgoblins, and the shaman come this way as a sneak attack and push into this room. And maybe, I don't know, are they going to ignore the dragon? Like, that's the question. Are they going to free the dragon? Are they going to try and recapture the dragon? Or you could have the chief and the hobgoblin and the shaman push to this way, start a whole bunch of crap, and then 10 goblin reinforcements come pouring through here, along with the 10 commoners. That's 20 goblins come rushing through this area, and maybe their whole goal is not to free the dragon, but to just push in and provide backup and distraction and come along and do a flanking maneuver around the back, right? So the reason I like to draw these maps out in kind of a disposable kind of way is that it allows me to see, again, get a new perspective on the combat, what's going on. You could have printed this off, but I like the lack of detail. I like all of the. If we flip this over, your notes become very muddy very quickly, right? You lay this on the top, you get a much clearer idea of you get more focus on what you're doing. All right. So that's, I think our hard move is to pour a bunch of forces in this way and then have some sort of reinforcements burst through this way. In terms of where the party's going to be, there's not a ton of options for the party. Let's get the party going in orange here just for the sake of. So there's a couple different rooms where the party could hole up for the night, right? They can hole up here. This room is empty. They can hole up here. This room is empty. And then if we look at the map, this room is also empty. 16. There's actually, theoretically, there's 3 kobolds in here too. I don't remember if those guys got murdered or not. I think I ruled that they weren't in there. So really, that makes 18 kobolds. So the other thing that I think is important for this round by round thing is you need to come up with you don't want to roll dice for all of these people, right? So thanks for popping in, Griffin. So you want to figure out what are your goblin casualties versus your, I don't know why this pen isn't running very well. So round by round, you should have an idea of, yeah, that just didn't show up for crap. So you got your goblin casualties versus your kobold casualties. So you should have a list round by round of, like, you know, either roll some dice or look at some averages and figure out, you know, if you give them a surprise round, how many kobolds could they murder the first round? They could take out, you know, they make a big push, they take out these 3 kobolds, one of them raises the alarm. You know, the other question is, where does Yusdrael sleep at night, right? That's not very well established in the adventure. Like, Yusdrael just has this throne. Okay, well, does she have chambers? I would be inclined to put Yusdrael in here, in which case this is no longer available to the players. So the players have to be out here somewhere, right? Okay, well, that, you know, unless they want to sleep in the meat locker thing, which seems bad. So, you got Yusdrael out here. That also gives you an idea of how many rounds it takes for these people to respond. These kobolds probably can't respond on round 1. Round 1, the alarm goes up. Oh, okay, problematic. Round 2, they prep themselves or whatever and make a single move. Well, they can get to here, they can get to here. Round 3, these 3 kobolds finally join the fight. Okay, these guys probably come in on round 2. These guys probably maybe don't even come in at all if they don't hear it. Something like that. And as Griffin points out, it might be a good idea to figure out like what our win or surrender or retreat conditions. Okay? How many goblins get killed off before the chief and the hobgoblins begin to roll back? All right? Do they lose 10 of their guards? You know, all 10 guards get wiped out, it's time to retreat. Do they, is it 6 of their guards get wiped out and they start their retreat? You know, I always, if you want to have a villain beat a tactical retreat, I always suggest that they start earlier than you think they need to. One round, for sure, one round earlier than you think that they need to start, right? So, because players are classic, like they always pull some ace out of their pocket and do a killing shot on something that like, oh, well, he's got 20 hit points left. He's going to start to retreat. And then enough of the other opposing forces have been whittled down that 3 players take a shot at that guy and he goes down like, you know, a box of rocks. So think about how many on each side, how many forces need to get eliminated before you either start retreating or you start pressing your advantage or you outright surrender. Or is there an outright surrender? Maybe there's no, we're not going to surrender. We're either going to pull back or we'll just, you know, you guys hold them off and we're going to retreat, right? So they may give, you know, Yggdrasil may give kind of suicide mission orders to the kobolds. Likewise, the chief may give suicide orders to some of his things. The other thing to keep in mind on this particular group of forces is, we put it on the map over here, but I think it's very legit to give the gobs some twig blights, right? So we can reinforce them, even though the numerical advantage is 18 versus really, you know, 10, something like that. And you got to keep in mind the party is 4 very strong players who are much stronger than any of these kobolds. So my intent here is like this is going to be the showcase encounter of the evening, and it's going to rip open the encounter right off the bat, or you know, rip open the session right off the bat, basically, right? We'll do our intros and we'll get things established, and then we're going to kick things off. This is going to happen. This is going to be a big event, and it's going to take probably an hour or 2 hours to play out. So I want to put some thought into it. I want to weigh these elements. And then beyond that, I want to think about like, okay, well, then they're going to probably go in and explore the rest of this area. And even though we've dumped 14 gobs behind, you know, or out of this room, there's still 10 or 12 of them left. What happens? What's left, you know, behind in terms of this area, right? So that's where I'm going with this session. It's a hard move. It's not one that's made out of malice. I think it's going to be dynamic and interesting. I think it will give the party the chance to flex their new second level muscles, and it will tax them, but also allow them to rise to the challenge. Okay? All right. That is our hard move. I don't always prep like this. The main reason I have done this, and I think hopefully I've made this point abundantly clear, is this is going to be a very tactical, on the battle map type of fight. This is going to be very moving the chess pieces type of thing. If in order to facilitate like bringing this encounter to bloom and making this worthy of a showcase kind of centerpiece encounter, I need to have a good, firm grip on where everybody is, how they interact, and what the various responses can be. I like the idea that this is actually Yggdrasil's chambers. That is illegible. The other final point that I want to make on this whole thing is I want you all to not only consider casualties and round by things, but I want you to consider what are some extraordinary location-based elements that I can include in this fight? Is there a giant fire pot that I can knock over? What are some interactive dynamic elements that I can include in this whole thing? Like, they free the wormling dragon, but they somehow dose him with some sort of poison or something like that that makes him go crazy. I think that could be super fun, right? So they come in, they spray this stuff in his, basically sort of like dragon catnip in his nose, and he starts going nuts. Well, now all of a sudden you got one fight that's happening here, and you got a whole nother like rowdy skirmish that's going on that is mitigated by the fact that they don't want to kill their dragon. I'm going to write that down here. Dragon catnip. Let's keep that in mind for an element. So those are all things that can turn the combat from like, I sit here and look at the battle map and go and plot my move and do things in a very predictable type of way, to add some dynamic elements like a giant brazier full of coals that could be dumped on the ground to create burning, difficult terrain, to a wormling dragon who's rampaging on the loose throughout the complex and causing chaos and breathing and freezing on kobolds and things like that. Now all of a sudden it goes from a very staid kind of almost like a Diablo-esque type of experience where I'm moving my chess piece through the dungeon and rolling my dice and having my things, to a much more engaging and exciting dynamic combat where I take advantage of terrain elements on the battlefield, which start tipping the flow and the rhythm of the battle in unexpected ways, changing the pacing. All right. So that's what we're looking at for tomorrow night. How will it actually play out? I need to put some thought into this, this rest of this afternoon and this evening. But I think, like I said, my entire point of spending so much time on this is I want this to be the showcase encounter for tonight. I don't want tomorrow night to be to be another round of let's explore the dungeon. Let's open this door. I listen at this door. Let's like. Those are all fun activities, but you've got to switch up the pacing for your players. And I think that's going to accomplish this. And it's also going to bring the dungeon to life. These are intelligent forces that have been battling each other for the course of, weeks or months, and they should respond in an intelligent way that demonstrates that they feel like they have the upper hand or that they have been hurt by the party's previous actions. It's a living response to what's going on, as opposed to a very static response of, okay, well, now next session, we're going to go, back around this way. Did anybody fill in? No, it doesn't say so in the book that they respond. Doesn't, we go in here. What's in this room? What's behind this door? Right? That makes your dungeon feel very flat. And that's what we don't want, is we don't want your dungeon to be static and passive. We want this area to be active and intriguing. That's a great way to raise the stakes, is to have your monsters respond in an intelligent way, which doesn't completely overwhelm or take advantage of your knowledge as the DM of what might happen, right? That doesn't completely stack the odds against the players. Okay? So that is that is something to keep in mind. In terms of the Twitch experience, like, it's not bad to have sessions where people listen at doors. That issue really goes back to, like, how much information do you get from a roll, right? If they stop and they listen at the door and they don't learn anything, then it feels like dead time. If they stop and they listen to the door, and even if they botch it, you describe why they botched it and add a little bit of information to the scenario, then it's at least somewhat more engaging than, I rolled a 6, I don't hear anything, what do you guys want to do? Well, let's have somebody else try listening at the door. Ugh. So, that's where I'm at. That's my thinking. That is my reasoning. You know, this is how I'm weighing making this hard move against them, and I feel like it is a hard move, right? To push combat at them and to take out some of their allies and put their allies in jeopardy. That's a hard move, but it's a good move, and I think it's going to be dramatic and exciting. All right, so the only other, I'm not going to turn the camera back around because it takes too much time, and I really just want to wrap up since I'm half an hour over what my stream time normally runs anyhow. But in terms of Carthoon, we... Oh, well, okay. You know what? Now I am gonna turn the camera around. Hang on. Since I knocked it off. Where did that go? Sure. I totally lumbled the camera, you guys. Hey, I'm over here. Guys, my eyes are up here. All right, so the only other, well, let's turn this off. Ugh, go away. All right, so the only other thing that I want to briefly touch on is we talked about a brand new book that has been delivered to Kickstarter backers, which is Carthoon. It is Brian Patterson's original fantasy setting that he started creating when he was a lowly teenager, first dipping his curly toes into horned. I don't know if he has horns on his toes. We can ask him that when he comes. And that's the big news, is that thanks to your generosity and support, we're bringing Brian in to run a session of Carthoon for our Alzheimer's charity marathon in June. It's June 23rd and 24th. He's going to be running a session. I don't know if it's going to be D&D or Fate, probably D&D if I had to guess. That will be next. Well, it'll be on that Saturday of the stream. So he'll be one of the closing slots. He'll be from 1 to 5. So I'm very excited and grateful to all of you for kicking in and getting us enough donations so that we can fly him in and put him up at a Airbnb and make that happen as part of our Alzheimer's charity stream. I think that's going to be very special and very fun. And he's just such an enthusiastic gamer that I think it's going to add something special to our stream. The other thing that I want to, yes, so it's D20 Monkey. It is it's a world that he has continued to develop through his comic. So if you have the opportunity, go to d20monkey.com and you can check out all of his story arcs. And this is the world of his comic. The world behind his comic put into print form. Evil Hat did a great job of producing this thing. It really is, I think, far more gorgeous than maybe it would have turned out if they had been left to their own devices. It really has terrific production values, and I'm very, very happy that I backed this book at the hardcover level and not just gotten the PDF or something like that. Along those lines, I am most likely Brian's going to play in a game that I'm going to run between 8 and noon on that as part of that marathon. That's right now that's the slot that I've been able to claim. So I have a couple things. If we're going to put this up tomorrow night, I haven't decided what I'm going to run as my default game. I'm kind of inclined to run Beastmasters of Yagamore, although we've already run that for charity stream a year and a half, 2 years ago. But I do love Beastmasters of Yagamore, and it's a very low prep type of game, and I think Brian would have a great time playing in it, and I think it would be fun to run it for Brian, etc. So that might be kind of my fallback. That might be my fallback position in terms of what I'm going to run. That's TBD, but I'll think about that some more tomorrow afternoon. But we're going to have a special stretch goal tomorrow night. As you know, when we hit $250 in donations, I put together a battle map for the following session. Now, I've put that together for the previous sessions and for this last session, and I think the map that I have right now will be usable for tomorrow night's session. But I expect after tomorrow night's events, we'll kind of be done with this level, and we'll be going on to the Grove level of the Sunless Citadel. So if we hit $250 in donations, I will be doing another battle map for that level of the dungeon. I'm still waiting for Dom to nail down the pricing on this, but as some sort of stretch goal, and I don't know if that's at 250 or if it's an additional stretch goal beyond that, I will open up my ALZ, my Alzheimer's charity stream, the game that I'm going to run, to be something that you folks at home can all vote on what I actually run, okay? And it's not going to be an open-ended vote. I'm going to give you several options. So one option, we're going to go back. Brian's an old school gamer just like me, so we're going to go back and I'm going to throw some old school sessions at you. So one is Star Frontiers. You play the original Star Frontiers with Star Frontiers characters. Star Frontiers meets Battlefield Earth. So that's the scenario, is Battlefield Earth. That's one thing that you could vote on. The other thing is we'll play a Marvel Superheroes game that all of the heroes are made completely at random using the Ultimate Power Source book. So if you're familiar with the old MSHAG, phase rip system, it would be the old Marvel Superhero Adventure game system with the completely bonk, like everything from like you can turn yourself into a toad to like you have class 1000 abilities to manipulate gravity, like all kinds of bonkers, crazy, just the characters will be completely random. So some characters will be super powered. Some characters will probably have really bizarre, weak powers. It could be a combination of both. But if you've ever used the Ultimate Power supplement, it makes characters that make zero sense. So that's the second option. The third option is we just play riffs and try to play riffs as straight up riffs as we can be. Maybe there'll be some sort of subvote on which supplement book or books are available. That would be the third session that I would consider running. So those are three things you could vote on. The final thing that I will throw out there is a little challenge that requires some work from you, but I think would pay off big time. And this is called RPG Roulette. Okay? And in RPG Roulette, you scan and send us a scan of any character sheet of any character from any game that you've played. It's got to be an RPG. Like you can't send, I don't know, like a Magic the Gathering card or something like that, right? It's got to be an RPG from any system, any character that you've ever played. You can send multiple in, and it does not matter what game it is. So if you have a Star Frontiers character or a Gamma World character or an old school D&D character that you played, etc., whatever your character is, we're going to throw them into possibly like a Battlefield Earth type of situation or some sort of maybe post-apocalyptic kind of Clash of Worlds type of situation. I haven't figured out the exact scenario completely, but the point being is that as characters die in the game, the players will have to pull a new character at random from this stack, and they will be incorporated into the game. Now, you might say to yourself, how is that even going to work? I suspect we're going to, like, my approach on it is we will run it as a Fate Accelerated game, and so there will be some dynamic of having to translate a champion's character into the existing game, but it's going to be high lethality, probably not make any sense whatsoever. Well, it'll make sense. It'll make sense, but I think it'll be fun to play different characters of all those different genres, have the players coming up with new characters as their characters get killed, and also just like look at like, I'm playing an aberrant guy and I have 3 points in plasma manipulation, whatever that means. So that would be the fourth thing that you could vote on. So all of those things I would essentially like put into a poll, and then you backers at home would have a week to vote on which one of those things you would want me to prep. So if we hit this stretch goal for the ALZ Marathon, you'll be able to pick something. You'll be able to open that poll, and then everybody who watches the channel will be able to vote over the course of the week. So it won't be decided tomorrow night. Tomorrow night just unlocks the possibility that you can help decide what I'm going to run for the ALZ Marathon. I'm excited about all of these ideas. I'm happy to run Star Frontiers meets Battlefield Earth. I'm happy to run a Marvel Superheroes phase rip game, go back to old school gaming roots. I had some other things in there, but it needs to be some stuff. It also needs to be some stuff that Brian recognizes, so we don't spend a lot of time teaching the rules and that sort of thing. And I didn't want to run a straight-up D&D game because Brian's going to run a straight-up D&D game, right? Even like an old-school 2nd edition game, which I considered running. Like, hey, I could run Tomb of Horrors, but I feel like other streams are going to do that, and I want to do something a little more original. So I'm happy to run like Star Frontiers, Marvel Superheroes, try and run Rifts. Honestly, I think that's the most daunting system out of all of the things that I suggested, but I'm really excited about RPG Roulette. It only works if you can help me get all those characters in a stack, so we have a whole bunch of weird characters, or I can find pre-gens on the internet. Like, I can't pre-gen 50 characters across 6 different systems or whatever. I'm okay with having like, okay, here's a stack of 10 D&D characters or 20 D&D characters of different classes and races and mixes and additions and all that kind of stuff. That's fun. So I'm not saying it has to be one per game system. So we can have, if somebody can find 10 Rift characters, great. 10 Marvel Superheroes characters or whatever system it is. You know, here's 8 Numenera characters. All of that stuff, as long as I can have a big stack of character sheets, that's what I want. But I need your help doing it because I can't spend the time prepping it. I will. I've got other commitments that I got to take care of. So that's my big Carthoon and ALZ announcement. I'm really excited to have Brian here. I'm really grateful to you guys for stepping up to the plate and making this thing happen. I think it's going to be super fun. And I want to run something special for him because I know that he's going to run something special for you guys, and I'm going to be able to play in this, and I'm excited about it. So that's my announcements for the day. Let's check out here and just kind of like roll back. You don't have to find all of your old characters. You just have to find some of them, James V. And you're also allowed to just recreate some of them or make up a character. I'm just trying to crowdsource some of the work because I will murder myself if I have to. Well, no, my wife will murder me if I have to make all these characters that are maybe only going to live for 2 minutes at a time. Let's take a gander at our calendar. Oh, that was awful. All right, so this has been Disorganized Play. Last night, I hope you tuned in for Talene's test run of her Harry Potter RPG, her new homebrew hack system. Tomorrow night, we're going to see how all of this bizarre mapping and planning is going to come together in Iron Creek Chronicles. That's my D&D 5th edition game. That's Sunless Citadel tomorrow night. Please tune in. Please support the stream. Thursday, I will come back here. Also, I always forget this because it's not on this calendar. Tomorrow at 2:15 Pacific to 3:15, we have over on the Geek and Sundry channel, I will be DMing the Dungeons & Dragons Improvised Campaign show. So if you'd like to join me for some truly, it's almost like a D&D adventure meets an improvised soap opera. It's really fun, and I've really been enjoying sitting in with these guys. So I hope you can sit in here for these sessions on Wednesday. That's at 2:15 over on Geek and Sundry. But tomorrow night at 8 o'clock is our D&D show here on Saving Throw. Thursday at 2, I come back and we comb through all of the hits, misses, and new opportunities that have arisen as a result of the session. I think it's going to be a great session. I think everybody's going to be pumped about being level 2. We did, through some generosity of James V and our other donors, get them a little extra juice on their hit points. So I think it'll be fun to see the players come around to getting a whole new level of ability. Because first level is tough, and I know it was a little bit cruel to make them play 3 whole sessions at first level, but I think it was worth it, and I think they enjoyed it. So, but I also feel like they've earned their reward. It's time to move on. It's time to assume greater power and get that, that next, bite off that next piece of little juice. How can you bite juice, you guys? Friday night, wild cards. It's wild. Oh, Wildcards does like the Wildcards. The season finale was last Friday. Thank you so much to everybody who donated and watched and tuned in during that stream. That's the stream that pushed us over the top to bring Brian in. So that was great. And now I believe they're doing a series of epilogues. So they're going to do sort of like standalone one-shots of here's what happens after the, what is it called? The Doom Tree? The Hangman's Tree? There's a giant evil tree. I tuned in for the end of it just briefly. So I want Dark Lord Manamarco. I want all of your old D&D characters. Please send them. Just make sure they're somewhat legible. Yes. Scan them and send them to us. You know, we got to unlock that option. So, but start thinking about it, right? Because I'm very excited about this idea, but we got to make it happen. And to be fair, you all have to vote on what you would like to see. So if people think that Rifts is going to be more goofy and fun and entertaining than RPG Roulette, that's fine. I get it. I'm with you. The voting power is in your hands. And then Saturday, of course, at 12:30, we have the continuing adventures of Phoenix Dawn Command, lovingly hosted by Ms. Mac Beauvais. So that is our calendar for the week. I want to thank you so much to all of our mods who sat in, all of our regulars who sat in. I want to give a big shout out to James V, who has set me up with a new webcam. Unfortunately, I have not personally been able to hook it all up and get it configured. So thank you for your patience, everyone, for letting me move the camera around and whatnot. But thank you all for your time, attention, your passion, your support. It's a great time to back our Patreon. If you want your own copy of the Plot Radar, please back our Patreon, and you gain access to that PDF, which is available for you all. So I think I've gotten all my thank yous and to-dos out of the way. I've got some work ahead of me. That means until next time, let's dungeon! 32 for 32. The streak is alive. The streak is alive.